Welcome to TYRO TV. I'm Ron Tijerina.
And I'm Cathy Tijerina. And Ron and I are the co-founders and co-directors of the Ridge Project and the co-creators of TYRO.
TYRO is a Latin word which means apprentice, novice, someone learning something new. A what? A warrior. Woo!
Heck,
What
yes.
are we training for? What is all this about? You know, we got fathers, families in training. TYRO Fit. Right?
So we are training to build a legacy of strong, thriving families because that's where true success is. When your family is stable and healthy and functioning, each of you can live up to your highest potential.
And while you're incarcerated, here's a great opportunity to reinvent yourself, redefine your existence, redefine what's your value in life, what is your moral compass, how do you want to be received when you come home, and then what do you want to create when you're there?
And how do you want to be perceived when you come home? As a leader or a lame? You get to choose. Ron and I went through 15 years of incarceration. Well, Ron did time on the inside, the kids and I did the time on the outside. And we learned a lot about facing everything and recovering, overcoming every obstacle. We knew what it was like to be shunned by society and to reestablish a new legacy. And so all that we've learned, we seek to teach people coming behind us. So we're hoping that you'll stay tuned and learn something today.
So fathers, as you're sitting there and you're seeing Cathy and I do this, listen, we are all on this continuous improvement plan. But the things that we have been able to acquire, able to learn, and really not only adapt, but thrive in the midst of while I was in prison, while Cathy was getting herself off of food stamps, finding a stable income, stable income,
yeah,
right? Buying a house while I was in prison, taking the boys through school, right? She homeschooled our sons, right? This is no simple task, but we were in a position of learning. We humbled ourselves, and people came alongside of us and helped and mentored us and coached us and it caused us to want to live for bigger tomorrows.
So in order to make this kind of life transformation, it takes courage. Courage every single day to face the obstacles. Courage every single day to say, you know what, I can do better and I will do better. And so as we overcame those, a lot of people will look at us and say, oh my gosh, like they're always all this passion, they're always all up. You know what? Yes, we know where we come from. And every day we are grateful that we are on this continuous improvement plan. Every day we celebrate with gratefulness that we're connected and together, that our family is thriving. You know, and so, you can do the same.
And that's it, man. We are so grateful. But guess what? As a leader, as leaders, what we want to talk about today, the buck stops where?
The buck stops here.
So the buck stops with you, Dad. You called yourself to be a leader. You're a father. You may be a husband. Maybe you're in a relationship. But the buck stops where? The buck stops here. And today, that's what we're going to talk about. What does that mean?
That was the first thing we had to learn in order to change our future was, you know what? The buck stops here. So if you want to know more about that, you want to know why that's so important, how to do it, and what actually we're talking about, then stay tuned because we're going to be right back.
Welcome back to TYRO TV. I'm Ron Tijerina.
And I'm Cathy Tijerina.
And today we're talking about leadership. We're talking about really standing on the mantle, embracing the mantle, carrying the mantle of leadership as a father, as a husband, as a son, as an employee, as a stakeholder in your company, whatever it is you're doing, right? But being a leader means one thing. You got to own it.
That's right. The buck stops here. What are we talking about? Personal responsibility.
Ooh, that's a big word, right?
And it's painful because, you know, personal responsibility means that I stop blaming everyone else and I recognize that, you know what? I have shortcomings. I've made mistakes and I'm inclined to make the same mistakes if I don't recognize that I have the flaws that are going to lead me that way. So the buck has to stop here. I have to own my own stuff.
And that's key to anyone's success. When you begin really taking that role as a leader, someone, even if you're, the word TYRO means novice, even if you're just beginning to understand or coming into a place of leadership where you've been given responsibility more than just waiting for somebody to do it for you, right? You've been coming into a place of where, you know what, I want to be that dad who always pays his bills on time. I want to be that man of honor worth following, where I can go to a bank and I can ask for a loan and no questions asked, right? I want to be that person where my wife can trust me. If I say I'm going to go to this grocery store, that's where I'm going. She's not having a mind battle. Why? Because she realizes that I, as a leader, I'm taking responsibility of all my actions, all my thoughts, all the words that proceed out of my mouth.
And so when we think about taking personal responsibility, that means that we are no longer blaming. So it's like, and this is a big deal. When the buck stops here, the buck stops here. And so the thing about the buck stopping here means that I am owning the fact that I have authority, I have control. It means that I recognize and I'm self-aware. This is really important. Say self-aware.
Self-aware.
Say it again.
Self-aware.
Because when you're self-aware, you recognize the power in you and you're empowered to make better choices. But when you are enabled, then you shun self-awareness because it's easier for everybody else to be to blame.
When the buck stops here, I think about when I hear that, when things don't go the way I wanted it to go, or the things don't go the way I thought they were going to go, right? The responsibility falls on us, falls on me as a family man, as running the home. If things don't go the way I thought they were going to go, I have to examine, okay, as a leader, did I not convey the vision clearly enough of what I was trying to accomplish? Or did I circumvent any processes to try to get where I wanted to go? What was the variables that took place in the situation that caused chaos to happen? Because at the end of the day, at the end of every family day, when you examine how was it, did we have success today? Or did I create something that I didn't want? Or did I allow something to happen that I didn't want? So the buck stops with who? It stops with me.
It stops with me. So if I have my hand in it and things don't go the way they should, I have to own my own part of that responsibility, own my own percent. So that means if I'm having a disagreement with Ron, right, and maybe Ron gets heated first and then I get heated, I have to own the fact that I got heated. I have to own the fact that I said or did something that I shouldn't have said or done, regardless of what other people around me say or do. I am responsible for my own actions, my own words, or my own lack of action, or my own lack of speaking truth. And when I own that, that means that I'm saying, you know what, the buck stops here. And that creates an incredible amount of trust.
The buck stops here. Say that, guys. The buck stops here. Say it again. The buck stops here. So anything that's happening in the day room, anything that is taking place in the yard, anything that's happening in your cell, anywhere you're at, guess what? You are responsible for who? You're responsible for you. You're not responsible for the correction officers. You're not responsible for the guy that you're living with. You're not responsible for the guys on the yard. You're not responsible for them. Right now, the buck stops with you, Dad, because why? You want to become that leader that when you get home, you will own. Listen, now watch this. You will own the mistakes that happen because as a leader, you get to lead and you got to own everything that happens. Now, when victory happens, we're talking about the buck stops here. If you are instigating success, if you are empowering others to be successful, there's a difference when you own the mistakes, when you own the things that don't go your way, right? Or the things that fall through the cracks.
Right. Yeah.
You own it all by yourself. But when it's time to celebrate, we're going to talk about that too. The other side of this is you don't own the celebrations by yourself. Unless
you're the only one that contributes. So if you literally make a wooden box from scratch all by yourself.
And it's beautiful.
You own that. But now, if you have other people that come and they help you sand and they help you stain and they teach you how to cut the corners just right, and they tell you how to use the web pegs, then when that box is done and it's a beautiful work of art, that's a team effort. And so we'll talk about the buck stops here for your own personal responsibility. You have control and authority that nobody else has over the way you think, the way you act, the way you speak. And when you understand that, that gives you the freedom to create a brand new future.
So when we come back, we're going to talk about the why. Why is this important to really understand the buck stops here? So stay tuned and we'll be right back. Welcome back to TYRO TV. I'm Ron Tijerina.
And I'm Cathy Tijerina.
And today we're talking about the buck stops
Here.
The buck stops with you, Dad. The buck stops with you, Father. If you're a dad and you got a family and you're in prison, guess what? You can't blame anybody else for that situation. Yeah. Believe me, I tried.
And you see, here's the big flaw in our thinking. So when we're broken and when we're insecure, when unhealthy, and we haven't really owned our stuff and our story, what happens is it's a lot easier. We want to shift blame away from us because we feel like somehow if we take responsibility for something that failed, that it undermines us and it casts us in a bad light, and then we end up being even more of a failure. But the truth is the opposite. When we own our own mistakes and we own, whether it's good or bad, we own it, we're transparent, and we're forthcoming, right? Then actually what it does is it creates respect around us, like, wow, they stood up, mom, dad, whoever owned it, and said, you know what, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. And it creates an atmosphere of transparency, authenticity, trustworthiness. And if that's the legacy that you want to create in your home, then the buck has got to stop with you. You've got to be transparent and own your flaws and your mistakes.
So why is it important? What is it you're trying to create? So you've been in the penitentiary for a little while. You've been sitting in the day room. You've been on your rack. You've been walking the yard. And you've been dreaming about a better future, a better tomorrow, of what if this could happen. So what is it you're trying to breed? What are you creating? You know, when we talk about the buck stops here, right, you want to be taken at your word. At the end of the day, in the prison, the only thing you have to carry you to the next day is what? Your word. And that's the same, that truth in prison is the same truth out here. There are not many things in prison that you can carry to the streets, but there's one thing you can carry, and that's becoming a man of your word while you're inside there. Why? Because the buck stops with you. And when you come home, your children and your family is counting on you to own your mistakes. And Cathy said it creates a sense of new respect because now you can own your mistakes. Now you're not walking in shame and guilt anymore. Man, you don't have to carry a dark cloud over your life. Yeah. When you recognize something, when you recognize a mistake, you quickly own it, and then you can pivot and be healed from it, correct it, and make it right.
So we all know that there's no such thing as perfect, right? So when someone says to themselves and pretends like, you know what, it's not okay to fail. It's not okay to not be perfect. And so I have to put on this facade and pretend like I know everything, that it's everybody else's fault when something goes wrong. And I've got, in order to lead well and be respected, I always have to be right, and I always have to do the right thing. The truth is that you're eroding trust in people around you, because we all know that human beings are not perfect. We all know that everybody makes mistakes. When you own that mistake, it actually increases trust in you, because we can sit there and I will never forget this. I will never forget one of my very first bosses after Ron went to prison. And then she was a really powerful woman, and she had created this incredible, I want to call it enterprise, right? And so she was amazing. She built it from nothing. And so I remember just seeing her as always being right. And I'll never forget the day in a staff meeting. She says, okay, we've been working on this project and we were planning on launching this thing, but you know what? I owe you guys an apology, because the more we get into it, the more that I realize and recognize that this was a flawed decision. That when I saw it and I thought that we could accomplish it, I didn't take all of these external factors into consideration. And so we're gonna have to put a pause on this project. Let me go back to the drawing board and figure out if we can even make this happen, or if we need to look at a different city or a different town. And it was like I was floored, because she owned 100% of the responsibility. And you know what it did? It caused every member of that team, every member of the staff, to raise her higher in trust and respect, because we were like, wow, she's gonna let us know that the buck is gonna stop here if it's her fault. And I can walk with someone like that because I can trust them. If you wanna have that kind of authority, you wanna have that kind of influence around the world that you live in, right? With whoever it is that's associated with you, then the buck has got to stop here.
So my question to you, dads, is how many of you have really owned your experience that you're having right now? Or are you still blaming the prosecutor? Are you still blaming maybe the victim in your case? Are you still blaming others for your situation in your life right now? Because the quicker you can say, you know what, the buck stops here, I knew what I was doing, and whatever it might be. They might have trumped the charges up, it doesn't matter. You're there. Now what? Because by owning this experience in your life, this is how healing takes place. This is how you become the best man you can be. This is how you will never experience this ever again, the experience you're having right now, by owning it, by saying, you know what? If I would have been home on a Friday night with my family and kids, I wouldn't be in prison today. Or you know what? If I wouldn't have taken that personal at the job site and hit the guy when he called me out my name, right? I wouldn't be in prison today. Or if I wouldn't have got drunk, or if I wouldn't have got high, you know, what if I wouldn't have, right? Those things are true because the buck stops here. But you always have a choice how you want the end of the story to be. And
you always
right
have
now,
a what?
A choice.
A choice.
You always have a choice, right? You already know what you don't want to look like, Dad. You already know where you don't want to go because you've been there. But now the buck stops with you. You have the power right now to make a conscious decision, right? By owning the buck stops here, I'm going to do everything I can to understand how to activate these principles in my life that me and my children and my family will never experience penitentiary again.
And it will not just raise trustworthiness with people outside of you, but you will walk in much more confidence because you will know who you are and what you're capable of doing. So if you want to know how to actually exemplify this leadership concept, stay tuned because we'll be right back.
Playing catch, basketball, laughing and enjoying each other's company. These are all normal things on the outside, but many times are missed in a visitation setting. TYRO Dads brings the same fun experience to the inside through family days. As a TYRO Dad, you have the opportunity to participate in this fantastic event. Family Day is designed to allow fathers and families to engage with each other through activities designed to stimulate communication, learning, and play. Family Days will not only be a highlight for you, but for your children as well. The Ridge Project has strategically developed Family Day as an opportunity to help you connect with your child throughout your separation and help both of you develop skills to continue building your relationship when you return home.
Welcome back to TYRO TV. I'm Ron Tijerina.
And I'm Cathy Tijerina.
And today we're talking about the buck stops with you.
Right here.
Right?
The buck stops here.
The buck stops here.
And we talked about what we really mean. And we say that. We mean personal responsibility.
We're talking about, really manning up.
Yeah.
Really manning up to where you're at today in life.
And what we say is TYRO up.
TYRO up, puppy.
That's right. And we talked about why it's so important because not only are you increasing safety in your sphere of influence, you're increasing your reputation as being trustworthy, transparent, accountable, authentic.
And you're creating a legacy where people can take you at your word. You create a sense of, when you're this vulnerable. Now listen, Cathy mentioned something during our break here. This is a scary place to put yourself into.
It's easy to say. It is so hard to do because it makes you vulnerable. And like being able to own your own mistakes, to look someone in the eye without getting caught red-handed. It's one thing to say, oh, wow, I'm really sorry. Yeah, I had my hand in the cup. That's because Ron says, whoa, is your hand in the cup? Now, let's say he didn't see me with my hand in the cup, and I said, Ron, I have something to tell you. I've been sticking my hand in the cup.
In the cookie jar, right?
Don't drink out of this. I had my hand up in there.
Right.
Digging ice out.
Right? But this is a scary place. So being a leader, is it easy? Absolutely not.
Is it worth it?
Absolutely. It's
so
worth
we're
it.
going to give you 3 tips, 3 things you can do right now to help you learn to become more authentic, transparent, and be a true leader. And that means you're going to own your mistakes. You're going to look people right in the eye and say, you know what, I am really sorry. This is what I did. And to avoid doing that again, this is what I'm going to do to make myself accountable.
So the first thing is you need to get a mentor. You need to find somebody in your sphere of influence, in your circle, that you can trust, that can help you navigate through this new level of leadership, right? What does it mean to stop the buck right here? I own my stuff, right? So you need a mentor to help you navigate, to understand how to act. So you got to find somebody who's doing that now.
Right. And truly, because we had talked about before, like, hey, maybe we need multiple people, but I'm going to tell you the truth. It's hard to find somebody who is transparent and authentic enough to the buck stops here, but they don't accept responsibility. They don't accept responsibility. They respect themselves enough to just own their own stuff. Find that person and say, hey, will you help me? I really want to overcome my insecurities and start owning my own story.
Number 2 is don't wait.
Ooh.
Right? So when you know you fell short, you know you made a mistake, or something didn't happen as a leader, own it. Boom.
ASAP. As fast as you possibly can. You know what? And you do something, you mess up, it's like, you know what, I got to talk to my partner. You know what, as soon as you do that, there'll be freedom. There might be an initial disappointment or pain, but freedom, because it's like, wow, I can trust him to tell me the truth. Even when it puts him in a bad light, he's going to tell me the truth.
Guess what? Because a leader, guess what? You're going to be in a bad light, man. We're
For
all
a
human.
minute.
We all make mistakes. But the problem is when we try to cover it up.
Yep.
Don't cover it up.
Which is the third one, resist defensiveness. Resist it. So if you're going to own it right away, resist the urge to be defensive about it. When people ask you additional questions, don't make excuses. Own it straight up. Well, Cathy, why were you digging ice out of the cup with your hand? That's a legitimate question. So I can either give into my defensiveness and start a fight, which is now undoing all of my authenticity, or I can say, you know what? I don't really know why. I guess it was just laziness. I didn't want to get up, go in the kitchen and get a spoon. And so when I own that, they're like, wow, well, you know what? Thanks for sharing that. And I'll be like, you know what? I'm not going to do that again.
And you'll find out when you begin to really become this transparent. Now listen, as we said earlier, this takes courage, right? To put yourself out there like that, right? Because not everybody's gonna understand. So that's why it's really crucial to find that right mentor to help you walk through your leadership growth. Right?
Because initially, as you begin to share, as you become, number 4, be vulnerable, right? Allow yourself to be vulnerable. Initially, people that know your past and know that maybe you haven't always been transparent, you haven't always owned your mistakes, they're going to use it against you. Just be prepared for that. The initial response is going to be like, oh, okay, well, I see how you are. I knew you didn't change. I knew you were still like that. And so initially, your reputation might be harmed for just a minute. But as you are consistent in trying to overcome and in putting those continuous improvement plans and those things in place and that accountability in place, it actually is going to be like, wow, you know what? Look at the change in Ron. He's authentic, he's real, he owns his mistakes, he's continuously improving and trying to become better. I can trust him. I'm going to go to him when I want advice.
And that's what your family wants, Dad. They want to know that they can trust you. They want to know that they can come to you. Maybe in the past you always reacted in a way that maybe you cut them down or you threw a temper tantrum.
Yeah, that's real.
Right?
Yeah.
And these things are real. But when the buck stops here, when you begin to really understand, okay, you know what? This ain't about me. As a leader, my job is to edify and to lift up others. But in order to do that, I got to lift up myself to a place of where, you know what, I'm not going to let the things hold me down. I'm not going to let those things in the past that knock me down. I'm going to own my mistakes. I'm not going to let them dictate to me. And we have a saying in the world of TYRO, my past doesn't define who I am, but it's going to qualify you for something greater if you let it.
So as we're talking, there's things that are coming to your mind of, man, I never resolved that. You know what? I never went back and made that right. So those are the things you start with. Those are the things that are kind of eating at you inside that you're thinking, wow, you know what? This is really hard and it's going to be painful, but I've got to own it. I've got to make it right so that I can move forward beyond it, because the buck stops here.
So we come back, we're going to wrap all this up, right? So you don't want to miss this. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. Welcome back to TYRO TV. I'm Ron Tijerina.
And I'm Cathy Tijerina.
And today we've been talking about something that really is convicting, right?
Yes.
As a leader, you're being reminded that the buck stops with you.
Right here. The buck stops here. And that's really, really hard. Like, we're talking about it like it's a super easy thing, but we recognize the struggle that it is to actually begin to live your life that way, where it's like, no longer am I a victim. No longer am I making excuses for my behavior. Instead, I'm owning it. And that's the first step towards total recovery from your past and total recovery of your reputation.
So I'm going to say one thing here, dads. You're out there, you're listening to what Cathy and I are talking about. If you're still blaming others, right? And you're calling yourself a leader now. Watch this one. If you're calling yourself a leader, but you're still blaming others for your predicament right now in your life, where you're at in life, it doesn't matter where you're at. If you're still blaming others, you're not a leader.
And if
right?
you're still hiding things and you've decided, you know what, I'm going to sneak and do this thing that's immoral or whatever it is, and you're hiding things from your spouse and pretending like everything's going to be okay, or your significant other, if you're not who you say you are, you will be exposed for who you really are.
Oh,
and
man.
it's so much better if you're the one that sheds the light on it, and without getting caught, go and say, you know what, honey, I have something to tell you. I got caught up gambling again, and I'm really sorry. And you know what? These are the things I'm going to do so that I don't end up in that situation again. But I wanted to be transparent with you. I wanted you to know that you can trust me. And you don't, I mean, initially she's going to be disappointed and frustrated, and she might say, but then she's going to walk away with, wow.
That's the first time he's
ever just told me.
You know, and that's where the buck stops here, dads. Your children are counting on you to be the example of what it means to be honorable, what it means to be transparent, what it means to be vulnerable in your relationship. They're looking at you to show them how a healthy relationship is supposed to conduct, is supposed to run every day.
Yeah.
Right?
And then the more that you accept that, now your kids are prepared to accept responsibility for their own actions, which means that they're empowered to create their own future. If they live a life where all they see is you talking about being victimized and, you know, poor you, life just happens to you and it's everybody else's fault, then they feel like no matter what they do, they'll never get ahead. You want to empower your kids? Stand up, let the buck stop here.
Let the buck stop with you. And listen, dads, if you're out there and you're the mother of your children, maybe you're not in a relationship with them, if you're cutting down the mother of your children in front of your kids, if you're saying bad things about the mother of your children to your kids, man, stop it. The buck stops with you, right? It takes two to tango, it takes two to dance.
Yes, own your own stuff. Create your own positive legacy and pour into your kids. You know, we know that today there was something we said that can change your life if you hear it and if you apply it.
So, thank you for letting us be part of your TYRO journey. And always remember, here on TYRO TV, that we are rooting for you.